KRQE Media Group presents a KRQE Sports Special with Van Tate. A race in the skies inside competitive ballooning.
Every year, hundreds of balloons take the skies over the Rio Grande Valley for the Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta. Attendees flock from the world over to experience the spectacle, taking pictures, sampling the food. But for the pilots and their crews, the most anticipated and watched event of the year is the FAI World Hot Air Balloon Championship. FAI, also known as the World Air Sports Federation, invites only the best of the best, the most competent and daring pilots from around the world to compete for the title of world champion. It's no surprise that the first ever international hot air balloon competition took place right here in Albuquerque in 1973 as part of the second ever Balloon Fiesta. But watching from the ground, it's hard to understand the planning, endurance, and quick thinking that all goes into competition ballooning, which is why we're going inside New Mexico's own qualifying competition, the Rio Grande Classic, hosted by one of the world's oldest balloon competing clubs, Top Gun Ballooning. We're talking to organizers, pilots, and crews from some of the best teams in the country to learn about the strategy, tools, and techniques that go into ballooning competition. Up first, Jared Chester is going to walk us through the rules of the sport and what it takes to win a race without a steering wheel.
Competitive ballooning is all about three things: speed, precision, and planning. But what exactly are pilots being judged on? Well, every competition is different, and that has a lot to do with the event coordinator who sets tasks for the pilots to complete. Let's run through what a normal competition day looks like. First, about an hour before dawn, all the teams and organizers meet up during a pilot's briefing. Here they go over the weather forecast. Yep, there's KRQE Chief Meteorologist Grant Tostrud floating around talking shop, and most importantly for the pilots and their crews, the tasks they'll be competing in. Tasks are the individual challenges pilots will be scored on, and they range from location objectives to complicated mid-air maneuvers and are often strung together like a scavenger hunt across the skies. Sometimes these tasks are arranged to be performed in specific order. At other times, the event coordinator may leave the field open and allow the competitors to pilot their own course. But once the pilots have a clear understanding of the tasks that they are being scored on, they'll set off finding the best launch point and set up for a launch as quick as possible. All the tasks are scored individually and are added up at the end of competition, where a winner will be declared. Before we look at a few of these tasks, here are some things to remember about how piloting a hot air balloon works. A pilot can only directly control their balloon in one axis, going up by firing the burners and going down by laying off the heat or venting hot air from the top of the envelope. Oh yeah, they can also rotate the balloon, but that's mostly for preventing neck strain. Wind layers move in different directions at different elevations. Astute pilots can rise up or drop down into different layers to catch the current, which helps them pilot a course across the sky, using the envelope of their balloon like a sail. But the pilot isn't controlling the wind and can only react to changes in the current and harness what Mother Nature is providing. Just as the direction of the wind is constantly changing, so are the speeds of the wind, which is important for a pilot in the middle of a race. Another thing to take into consideration is if a pilot wants to maneuver into a different wind layer to change direction, say up 1,000 feet, to catch this easterly wind, the time it takes to climb up to that layer may set them off course, especially if the wind speeds are high in that lower current. So a high wind speed may have an advantage in shaving off the time in a pilot's run, but it also makes precise navigation far more difficult. Now that you have some basics on balloon piloting, let's take a look at the tasks these pilots are being scored on. Now there are a bunch, so we're only going to be looking at a few, but you could go to Top Gun Ballooning's website to see the full list. The fly-in task is the bedrock for most of these competitions. Pilots choose a launch point and fly into another location, dropping a marker from the basket, usually like a beanbag, as close to the marked target as possible. The Gordon Bennett is like the fly-in, but here the event coordinator has selected an area near a target, say this parking lot, and pilots drop their mark in the designated area as close to the mark as possible. The elbow is a maneuvering task designed to test a pilot's ability to make the most dramatic change in direction. Now, if a pilot is heading north, in this case, they could raise up by 500 feet and grab a high-speed easterly wind. The name starts to make sense here when you take a bird's eye view of the course. The pilot's flight path will look like your arm bending at the elbow. Finally, there's the least time task, which is another maneuvering score. This time, the event coordinator has selected an area on the map, and pilots are being scored on who can move through that area in the least amount of time. So yes, it's all about going as fast as possible. Now, there is also a most time task, which is being scored on how slowly a pilot moves through a set area. All right, now that you know what some of the different tasks are, let's put them together and see what a real competition looks like. In this hypothetical competition day, the event coordinator has selected 4 tasks, starting with a fly-in to this point. After completing or failing that task, the pilot must then perform an elbow. Here, judges will use the in-flight GPS calculator to measure the change in direction and determine the winner. With the elbow complete, the pilot is now heading here for the Gordon Bennett task. But on the way, they must move through this zone for a least time task. Finally, the pilot lands and points are calculated, and the competition day is over. There are many different strategies a team could utilize to maximize their scoring, but more on that later. Van, back to you.
Thanks, Jared. When we come back, I'm talking to some of the best pilots in the country to find out what got them into flying.
A race in the skies, inside competitive ballooning.
Hey guys, Chad Brummett here with New Mexico Frontiers, the KRQE original series that focuses on tech and innovation happening right here in New Mexico. We've got a lot of great stories about various businesses, technology, and of course space exploration. So make sure that you follow us on air at KRQE and Fox New Mexico, as well as our KRQE YouTube channel online.
Welcome back. I'm Van Tate, sports director at KRQE News 13. Here in New Mexico, we've been taking a deep dive into competitive hot air ballooning. Now that we've gone over the basics of competition, let's sit down with a few pilots to hear about how they got into the sport. We were at the Rio Grande Classic, New Mexico's qualifying event for the FAI World Championship earlier this year, and I had a chance to meet some of America's top-ranked pilots. And let me tell you, they're interesting folks, to say the least. Like any sport, the drive it takes to become a top-ranked pilot borders on obsession, and ballooning is an expensive, time-consuming sport. And any mistakes made at 2,000 feet above the ground aren't just a setback for the competition, they can also be fatal. Like most athletes, many competitive balloonists got their start young.
I've been to Balloon Fiesta every year of my life, and when I was just a little kid, 7 years old, my parents got talked into being chase crew.
My first hour in a balloon was when I was 12 years old. The first time I ever touched a burner, had a full hour flight, was when I was 12 years old.
And eventually, piloting became more than a hobby.
Then along the road somewhere, I guess I got a reputation for myself and got offered a job. And thought, yeah, fly balloons for a living, sure.
For many competitive pilots, the thrill of flying under pressure is what drew them in.
It gets a little intense. Yeah, it's kind of, even though it's a balloon, it's kind of like getting behind a race car for us. We like to, come in a little high and dive down on the targets.
And the difficulty of the sport has kept them engaged.
It's like sail racing, but we're doing it three-dimensionally. It's three-dimensional sailing. And, getting up there and finding those different wind layers and getting those turns, and man, it's so exhilarating.
It's like a bunch of highways in the sky, going different directions at different speeds.
Ballooning is expensive though, and many pilots use their skills outside of competitions to pay bills.
That's why I do 7 days a week is go fly passengers. That's what pays the bills, and I turn around and spend all that money so I can come race balloons.
Pilots come from all walks of life, and as Morgan Chandel suggests,
every pilot's different.
To perform at their best, pilots lean heavily on their crews, often working with the same team year after year.
But they are the most important people to be out here with. I mean, without them, there's no way I could get the balloon in the air by myself and focus on being able to do these tasks.
And in many cases, crew pilots are either working towards their license or are accomplished pilots themselves.
So one guy on my crew is actually a past Top Gun champion as well, that basically I came up and I crewed for him for years. So he gives me a lot of knowledge. Sometimes I can ask him like what he thinks the winds are doing. That's instrumental. Learning from learning from the elders and the people that have been doing this for a lot longer helps me a lot.
That spirit of mentorship and collaboration is common in ballooning, and as Chando says, transcends borders.
You're coming into this massive family. It's not only Albuquerque, it's the entire world. There's balloon people everywhere.
For some, like pilot Sean Spiker, pushing his limits brings him to the Rio Grande Classic.
The point of competition is to challenge myself as a pilot and continue to better myself. So.
And for others, like 2016 world champion Rhett Hartzell, Albuquerque's unique weather presents a different challenge than anywhere else in the world.
But in Albuquerque, there's always curveballs. And so you're kind of, when you're down there in the valley next to Balloon Fiesta Park, when the competition balloons fly there into the field, you'll literally see them launching like 360 degrees around the field. A lot of them make it in.
And Albuquerque's weather isn't the only draw for pilots.
The Top Gun group here at Albuquerque does a great job of, getting people interested. And they have like a weekend event almost every month, which nowhere else in the U.S. is doing that.
New Mexico's ballooning community is one of the largest and known as one of the most welcoming in the world.
One, we all look out for each other. Even on our worst day, we're still gonna, be there for one another, no matter what. Doesn't matter who it is. When it comes to the introduction to ballooning, if you want to get into ballooning, or anyone else out there, I would definitely say that go out and just kind of introduce yourself to anybody, any balloonist. You see him in the air, go say hi.
And as Jonathan Wright points out, even with all the complex mid-air maneuvering,
it's so peaceful and serene. And I mean, when you're up there, except for when you're hitting the burner, I mean, it's just completely quiet. But the balloon's moving with the wind. So whatever that wind's doing, you're moving along with it. I think the fastest I've ever flown was about 75 miles an hour in a hot air balloon. But it's cool because you're doing 75 miles an hour because the wind's going that fast. And inside the balloon, it's completely dead calm. You could light a match.
It's no wonder that pilots keep coming back to competitions.
So my dad's currently in first place here at this event, and he's 74 years old. So I guess I have to go that long.
Striving to be the best.
I'm gonna do it as long as I can. I mean, there's nothing in the world I love more than doing this. And I guess I'm gonna keep chasing it until I'm world champion.
Van Tate, KRQE News 13, Albuquerque. At the Rio Grande Classic, there were 3 competition days, one of which was canceled due to weather. But at Worlds, the competition can last a whole week. That adds a whole other layer to the equation, stamina. When we come back, we're going to look at the tools and strategies pilots use to succeed. Stay with us.
A race in the skies, inside competitive ballooning.
Hi, I'm Ann Perrette, an investigative reporter in our KRQE Investigates unit. We are always working on something new. Right after it airs on KRQE, you can always find it on our website, krqe.com, or the next day on our KRQE YouTube channel.
When pilots take to the skies to compete, the playing field can stretch for miles in every direction. Pilots and their crews stay in contact, sharing information and making split-second decisions based on ever-changing winds, trusting their equipment, their teams, and their instinct in order to take home the title. To get a clearer picture of how pilots made those decisions, we're joined by Zarek and Karen Wells, competitive pilots and owners of Baggies Out, a hot air ballooning sports media company. Brad sat down with them to take us inside the winning strategies.
Thanks, Van. I'm joined here with Zarek and Karen from Baggies Out. You guys are pilots yourselves, so first off, thank you guys so much for joining us today. And I just want to start off by asking you about the balloons themselves. So balloons obviously come in different shapes, different sizes. So I wanted to ask you kind of how do those different variables of a balloon itself kind of impact your guys' ability to maneuver, and kind of what are pros and cons of each different type of balloon?
So the main sort of shapes that we would have for competition would be the round and then a racer shape. With a round balloon, it's just more surface area, so going up and down sort of becomes more difficult. There's just more fabric to catch the wind. The football-like shape of the racer balloons, those can go up and down a little bit faster, so that allows us to take advantage of different wind directions at a little bit higher speeds because we can get there faster.
And when you come out to an event, you can see both the round and the racer. More of the competition style, of course, is the racer, but the round will get you to the same target as the racer as well.
Well, cool. A lot of different factors kind of go into a balloon's ability to maneuver around. Obviously, wind and weather are going to be huge. So once you guys are up in the air, what information are you gathering when you're up there?
The main thing that I'm looking at is like what are other balloons doing? So I'm trying to get a visual sort of eye on the target itself, if I can. And then I'll be watching where the balloon, like what direction the balloons are coming in from. If someone has a direction that I particularly want, I rely on my crew on the ground immensely.
When you come out to the target, you'll see us as the crew on the ground. A lot of times we'll have a helium-filled balloon attached to like a fishing line, and we're using that to actually get the degree at what the wind is doing at the surface where the target is. That way, he as the pilot can know exactly what line he needs to come and approach that target. So if you see us out there with the balloons on a string really up high, that's what we're looking for, is those wind directions to report back to our pilots.
So a lot going on. I'm sure that a lot of planning has to go into this ahead of time. When you're talking strategy going into a competition, do you kind of prioritize, one task over another, or how does stamina play into that?
For sure, like all of those things. So like you said, stamina. Most of the longer competitions, those are going to be at least a week long. Something like a world level competition, you're going to be flying potentially twice a day. So you're not just talking about like that morning, you're talking about endurance, about getting enough rest, making sure that you're well fed and your crew's well fed and everyone's doing well throughout the week. And then the actual morning of with the flight, where you need to plan out like how long is that flight going to be? How long is it going to take to get to all the tasks? How much fuel do I have? How much maneuvering am I going to have to do? So that sort of will play into maybe you have to sort of sacrifice going to one target because it might prevent you from going to the other targets as well.
It is a big numbers game. It's one of those, depending on where you're currently ranked, say we're in the middle of the week at the national competition, is it worth that sacrifice? Do I need to try hard to get there? How much time do I have? How much fuel do I have, as Zarek mentioned before? What do I need to get there? Did I drink too much coffee? Do I need a bathroom break, which we don't have in the basket? Just a lot of little details that we're thinking about as we're flying along in the morning. So thinking about all those numbers and those calculations, and that's a lot of what the crew does on the ground, is we're making all those numbers, checking those things against it, and reporting back to our pilots so that we can make sure that they have all the information that they need close at hand.
That's a good point also. Like some days all you need is a score. You just need to maintain. So a baggie on the ground is good enough, even if it's way out. But some other days you have to make sure that you're getting every single point that you can, so you're going to maybe throw a little bit more aggressively to try to move up in points.
So we have a competition here in Albuquerque, the Rio Grande Classic. I wanted to ask you guys kind of what stands out about this competition here and what makes it unique, what makes it special?
Every competition has sort of its unique characteristics just because of terrain, different event directors that attend there. The terrain sort of creates different weather patterns also, depending on where you are. So the Rio Grande Classic, you end up with a little bit more light and variable type conditions. So that can be difficult for people that are more used to sort of just straight line flying.
Zarek mentioned that we have the light and variable winds here. What that means that is at different altitudes, you're going different directions. And like he mentioned, that box allows you to come back over and get multiple attempts. So with the different directions, you may have a target and the first person that comes over goes right over. The second person that comes over may get a slight left, and the third person that comes over may get that slight right. So you never really know with the light and variable what you're going to get. It tends to be a little more of a luck draw, but still the skills will come out in the end and we'll have a definite winner.
So the Rio Grande Classic, it's a qualifier for nationals. Can you just kind of walk me through the whole FIA process and kind of what other competitions go into, qualifying for nationals and kind of what all of that entails?
Sure. So you have the Rio Grande Classic. That is a regional event, so that helps you qualify into nationals depending on how you do there. So if you're first, then you'll receive an invitation to go fly the world level competition, which has its own whole different invitation process.
We just got back from Hungary flying the World's competition. Team USA as a whole placed first overall in Hungary, so we brought that back here. And lots of other good stuff coming up as far as nationals and worlds for the Team USA.
All right, so you guys are from Baggies Out. Can you just tell me kind of who you guys are and what you guys do?
So with Baggies Out, what our goal is to spread competition ballooning out to a more broad audience.
We're out there to explain competition ballooning to everybody. A lot of times you see balloons just flying over the sky, but we want you to know a lot of times we're actually doing more than that. We're actually competing, perfecting our skills, and we want to share that with all of you.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Once again, Zarek and Karen from Baggies Out. I'm Brad Benson, KRQE News 13.
Thanks, Brad. If you're interested in keeping up with competitions around the country and world, be sure to follow Baggies Out on social media. Their team is at all the major hot air balloon competitions, keeping track of the scores and rankings. We'll be right back with more.
Kirky Cares Shoes for Kids is KRQE's biggest initiative of the year. And get this, we don't just go and give a couple of shoes here and there. We go into 10 Title I schools each year, and every single student in that school will get a brand new pair of shoes. We've given out more than 30,000 pairs of new shoes, and it's easy to donate. Go to kirkycares.com and hit the donate button.
The world of competitive hot air ballooning is a dynamic, intense sport, full of interesting characters. After talking to pilots, crews, and organizers, one thing is clear: you'll never meet a nicer bunch of sky sailors in your life than right here in New Mexico. We hope you enjoyed taking a closer look at competitive ballooning, and the next time you're at Balloon Fiesta or see a bunch of racers floating over the skies of Albuquerque on a Saturday morning, we hope you can look up and say, "Man, that was a good elbow." Keep your eyes open for hot air balloon competitions. The Balloon Federation of America has a full list of events on their website, but be sure to look out on Memorial Day weekend for the next Rio Grande Classic, followed by the USA Nationals later in June. We wanted to give a big thank you to Top Gun Ballooning for opening their doors to us. If you're interested in getting into ballooning, they're a great resource right here in New Mexico and are one of the most active ballooning clubs in the world. Zarek and his whole team at Baggies Out are doing great work as well. If you want to follow the latest in competitive ballooning, be sure to find them online. And as always, I'm Van Tate, KRQE Sports Director. For all your New Mexico sports news, we're here. On air, online, all the time. Stay up, Albuquerque. We'll see you out there.